What happens when a child keeps moving from grade to grade but never truly catches up? Recently, I had a parent say something to me that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. She said, "I don't understand how my child is in 8th grade." And she wasn't saying it out of anger. She was saying it out of heartbreak. Because despite years of struggle, despite concerns, despite beginning the IEP process at another school, she felt like nothing had really changed. And now she's asking, why is my child still falling through the cracks? Welcome back to the Advocate Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kristi N. Love. And that question is bigger than one child, bigger than one parent, and honestly, bigger than one school. Because today we need to talk about something education doesn't always handle well: retention, social promotion, and intervention. And what happens when students continue moving forward without the support they truly need. Let's go.
Dr. Kristi N. Love is an experienced educator and advocate dedicated to empowering students and families to ensure children receive a high-quality education. She specializes in culturally responsive teaching, restorative practices, and social-emotional learning, helping schools create supportive and inclusive environments. Through the Advocate Podcast, she amplifies voices, challenges inequitable systems, and keeps children at the center of every conversation.
When parents ask whether a child should be retained, that usually isn't the real question. The deeper question is, why didn't my child get what they needed earlier? Because students rarely wake up in 8th grade suddenly unable to read proficiently or suddenly struggling with foundational math. Usually, the signs were there years earlier. Maybe in kindergarten, maybe in 1st grade, maybe when they started avoiding reading aloud or struggling to remember sounds or shutting down during math or getting frustrated easily. And sometimes schools respond quickly, but sometimes students are passed along with comments like, "They'll mature. Let's wait and see. They're trying. They're close enough." And year after year, the gap grows. Students don't usually fall behind overnight. They fall behind gradually while moving forward academically. Now let's talk about the phrase people hear all the time: social promotion, which basically means students are promoted to the next grade level even when they haven't fully mastered the current one. And this topic makes people emotional. Some people say holding students back hurts their confidence. Others say passing students along hurts them even more. And honestly, both concerns are valid. Because retention is not a simple issue. There are students who benefit from an extra year, and there are students who experience shame, embarrassment, or disengagement afterward. But here's what I think sometimes gets lost in the conversation. Retention alone does not solve learning problems. If the instruction stays the same, if the interventions stay the same, if the support stays the same, then repeating the grade may simply repeat the struggle. That's why the conversation cannot just be, should the student repeat the grade? The real question is, what support is being added so the outcome changes? One of the hardest realities in education is this: grades can hide learning gaps. A student may pass because they complete assignments, behave well, receive participation points, get partial credit, and turn in work on time. But passing grades do not always mean mastery. And parents trust report cards. Of course they do. If a child keeps getting promoted, most parents naturally assume my child must be doing okay. But then middle school comes, or high school, and suddenly the work becomes more independent, more complex, and foundational gaps become impossible to hide. Now, the student who once survived school through compliance starts struggling academically, and parents are left confused. They start asking, how did we get here? Sometimes the problem isn't that students stopped learning. It's that the gaps finally became too big to mask. Now, let's talk about something important. Not every struggling student needs special education, but some students absolutely do. And one of the most painful things for families is feeling like concerns were ignored far too long. I've heard parents say things like, I brought this up years ago. I kept asking for help. They told me to wait. They said my child would catch up. And eventually the parent begins asking about evaluations, testing, support services, and accommodations. And sometimes schools respond quickly, but sometimes families feel like they're entering a battle. Here's what I want parents to understand. A child can earn passing grades and still have educational needs. A child can be intelligent and still require support. A child can be trying hard and still need interventions. And I also think it is important to bring balance to this conversation. Because sometimes parents feel like schools are refusing to help, when in reality, there are steps that legally and educationally have to happen before special education testing can move forward. Schools have to determine, is there a possible disability? Or could the struggles be connected to other factors like inconsistent attendance, frequent school changes, lack of intervention consistency, gaps in instruction, trauma, or missed learning opportunities? For example, if a student has excessive absences, it becomes difficult to determine whether the academic gaps are caused by a disability or because the student has missed large amounts of instruction. And that distinction matters. There also has to be documentation, interventions, progress monitoring, parent consent, communication, follow through. And sometimes when students move from school to school, or paperwork is delayed or incomplete, or meetings are missed, the process can become delayed or interrupted. And sometimes families don't realize the process stopped until years later. That doesn't mean parents don't care, and it doesn't automatically mean schools don't care either. But it does show us something important. Student support works best when schools and families work together consistently. Because identifying a learning disability is not just about noticing a student is struggling. It's about gathering enough information to understand why they are struggling. And that process takes collaboration, consistency, and information from everyone involved. And this is why early intervention matters so much. Because the earlier we identify challenges, the better chance we have of closing gaps before students internalize failure. Imagine struggling every single day in school while everyone assumes you're fine because you passed. That's exhausting. We talk a lot about academic performance, but we don't talk enough about emotional impact. What happens emotionally to students who constantly feel confused, who avoid raising their hands, who learn to become invisible, who joke to hide embarrassment, who act out because frustration feels safer than vulnerability? And on the other side, what happens emotionally to students who are retained? Students who watch their peers move forward without them. Students who feel ashamed, different, behind. This is why retention conversations require compassion, because there is no easy answer. But here's the truth. Continuing to promote a struggling child without meaningful support is not compassion either. Sometimes we confuse avoiding discomfort with solving the problem, and they are not the same thing. A student can be emotionally harmed by retention, but they can also be emotionally harmed by years of silent struggle. Schools are often balancing impossible pressures: graduation rates, standardized testing, parent concerns, staffing shortages, limited intervention resources, large class sizes. And educators are trying. Many truly are. But systems sometimes become reactive instead of proactive. Instead of asking, what support does this child need right now, we wait until the struggle becomes severe. And by then, the gap may be years wide. I also think schools sometimes get trapped between two fears: fear of retaining students and fear of failing accountability measures. So students continue moving forward even when everyone quietly knows they are struggling. And that helps nobody. Not the student, not the teacher, not the parent. So, what do students really need? First, early intervention, not years of wait and see. Second, honest communication. Parents deserve truthful conversations, not sugar-coated data, not confusing educational language, and definitely not silence. Third, targeted support. Not just more worksheets, not just repeating content louder. Real intervention, real strategy, real skill building. Fourth, high expectations with support. This matters because support should not mean lowering standards. It should mean increasing the help students receive so they can meet them. Real support is not pretending students are okay. Real support is helping them become okay. So parents, if your child is struggling, trust what you see. Ask questions, request meetings, document concerns. Ask specifically what interventions are being used, what data supports progress, what happens if growth isn't occurring, what supports are available. And don't let grades alone determine your understanding of your child's learning, because sometimes students learn how to survive school without truly understanding the content. And that survival can hide struggle for years. At the beginning of this episode, I shared the words of a parent who said, "I don't understand how my child is in 8th grade." And honestly, that question should challenge all of us. Not with blame, but with reflection. Because the goal should never simply be promotion. or retention. The goal should be learning. The goal should be preparation. The goal should be support that actually changes outcomes. And maybe the better question isn't, should the student be retained? Maybe the better question is, what should have happened long before we got here? Passing students forward without the support they need does not move them ahead. It only moves the struggle to the next grade. If this episode spoke to you, share it. Start the conversation and ask yourself, are we responding to student struggles early enough? Or are we waiting until the gaps become impossible to ignore? Because every year matters, and every child deserves the opportunity not just to pass, but to truly learn. Thank you again for joining the Advocate Podcast. I've been your host, Dr. Kristi N. Love. And until next time, keep asking the hard questions, keep showing up for children, and keep advocating, because children deserve adults who won't stop fighting for them. Be blessed.